Good afternoon, everyone. Marcus here from the Lettings Club. Hope you're all having a brilliant Thursday afternoon. Just jumping on camera, last week the Renters Reform Bill was officially announced after quite a long wait for the details to be revealed. Lots and lots of changes to report for landlords, for letting agents and for tenants. So thought it was best to jump on camera, discuss a few of these points, and we can welcome any questions from there really. So I'm going to go through each of the key points in separate videos, pull them apart a little bit and open up the discussion. These are my first attempt at doing these types of videos, so please be kind. They are unedited and unscripted, so any imperfections you'll have to bear with me, but we'll give it a good shot. So we're going to start off with the introduction of rent increase caps. So in a move mainly to combat the inflation at the moment and the cost of living crisis, rent increases are going to be limited. The date is still to be confirmed when they're going to introduce this from, but the story is that rent increases will be limited to once per year. Tenants are going to be required to have a minimum of 2 months' notice, and they are only going to be able to be increased by what they're referring to as a justifiable amount. So that's yet to be confirmed. I suspect more than likely it will be linked to inflation. That's how normally they do these things, but still a detail to be confirmed. So on the face of it, it sounds like a brilliant policy for tenants. Rents are only going to be increased by a justifiable amount. That surely could only be good news, you would think. But when we scratch this back and look at the details and think about it from an economics perspective, in reality, it's probably bad news for tenants. So in the current system, when tenancies are coming up for renewal, we'll contact tenants, see what their plans are, and if they're happy to renew, we'll then go back to the landlord, discuss the position, and discuss rental rates, rental market, and contract extensions as well. When a tenant has been in a property, let's say as an example 12 months, they've been paying the rent, they're looking after the property, we find the majority of cases a landlord, regardless of what the rentals market is doing, will be happy to commit to a further extension without reviewing the rent. They do this because they know how valuable a tenant who respects the property and pays the rent is. And they have the flexibility to do that, so that in a few years' time, if that tenant moves out, or if a few years' time they need to increase in line with increasing mortgage rates, whatever the occasion, then they have the flexibility to take that view in a few years. The problem with the new policy is that landlords, the policy essentially removes that flexibility in that decision making, and forces landlords to make that decision every year, because if a landlord does not review a rent in line with that 12 months, then in another year's time, if they then need to review, they're not going to be able to make that difference up from the previous year. They're only going to be able to review in line with that year's policy. So what we will see is that landlords will start to take every opportunity they have to review the rent, because the problem is if they don't do that, they will be leaving themselves in an incredibly vulnerable position where if they haven't increased the rent in 3 years, rents have gone up significantly, interest rates have gone up significantly, mortgage repayments have gone up significantly. They could be in a position where mortgage rates are no longer rental rates are no longer covering the mortgage repayments. They can't afford to have that buy to let. They can't increase the rent in line with the market. They can only increase it in line with that year. So landlords will be in a really vulnerable position. As well as that, if they need to dispose of it. Prime example of this is if we go back and look back to protected tenancies from the Rental Act of 1977, where tenants were completely protected with rental increases and were not able to be evicted on, for example, the Section 21 didn't exist. And we're still seeing the effects of that today, where if anyone's been to a property auction, they'll know exactly what I mean. You see a property which everyone gets hugely excited about, it's priced at 50% of the value and everyone wants to see it, and then when you dig into the details, they see it's on a protected tenancy, the rent it's achieving is 50% of what it should be. All of a sudden no one wants to buy it, an owner-occupier can't buy it, because they can't move the tenant out, they can't evict them. Investor doesn't want to buy it because the yield is terrible and it wouldn't return them anything. So all of a sudden, this asset is worth very little. So again, landlords are in a vulnerable position with resale. And the harsh fact is that landlords will not be willing to put themselves in that position, and therefore they will be taking each opportunity they have to keep the rent going up in line with inflation and in line with mortgage rates and everything else. So what we'll see is, rather than landlords taking a flexible view, an understanding view, and maybe not increasing the rent every year, maybe every 3 years, every 4 years they might do an increase. Instead, we're going to be seeing, our tenants are going to be seeing rent increases every 12 months, in line with what the justifiable amount that the government suggests is. Sorry, we just had to cut them because the phone fell on its face, but we're here. So yeah, just to nicely conclude on everything and going back to the title of the video, we do think that the introduction of rent cap increases are going to be a negative for the industry, for tenants, for landlords, because of the points that we've raised today. It'd be really good to hear everyone's perspective on this. I'm sure there will be different opinions, which is fine. Please pop in the comments below, and it'd be good to hear from you. And as well, if anyone's got any questions, tenants, landlords, anyone else in the industry, it'd be good to hear from you. And yeah, hopefully we'll speak soon. Thank you very much.